This is a continuation of the test 3 review, and we're actually on question number 17 related to finding the inverse of a function. But before we actually work question 17, I want to look at a couple of other examples. In my opinion, question 17 is kind of one of the harder ones, and so they kind of just throw you into it. So I want to start with a couple of simpler examples so hopefully you can get the idea of what we're doing. When you're asked to find an inverse function, the first thing you have to decide is the function one-to-one? Visually, you would look at the graph and see if it passes the horizontal line test. Once you've confirmed that it is one-to-one and you know that an inverse exists, then we can find it. And the easiest way to find it algebraically, it's a two-step process. The first step in finding the inverse is we interchange x and y. Now remember that f of x is the same thing as y. So in the first step, we want to interchange x and y, and then secondly, we want to solve that resulting equation for y. Okay, so in this particular problem, we have f of x, or y, equals 3 minus 2x. And so the first thing I'm going to do is interchange x and y. So where there's a y, I'm going to put x, and where there's an x, I'm going to put y. And then I want to try to solve that resulting equation that I've written in blue for y. So to do that, I need to isolate the y, and I'm going to subtract 3 from either side. So I have x minus 3 equals negative 2y. Then I'm going to divide everything by negative 2. So we have y equals x minus 3 over negative 2. Now normally we don't leave the negative in the denominator, so I could move that and have the opposite of x minus 3 divided by 2, move that to the numerator, which could even be simplified to 3 minus x over 2. It's the same thing, and so you have to be careful because sometimes they'll write it one way, sometimes they'll write it another. And that result is the f inverse of x. This is most likely how you would see it written. Okay. The second example is f of x equals the cube root of 2x plus 5. Again, the first thing we want to do, remember that f of x is the same thing as y. We're going to interchange x and y. So if I do that, I would have x equals the cube root of 2y plus 5. And again, my goal at that point is to solve the resulting equation, again, that I've written in blue for x. So think about how you would go about doing that. We need to undo the cube. So to undo a cube root, we need to cube each side. So we have x to the third equals 2y plus 5. Again, I'm trying to solve for y. So then I'm going to subtract 5. So I have x cubed minus 5 equals 2y. Then I'm going to divide everything by 2. And the resulting equation is y equals x to the third minus 5, all divided by 2. And again, remember that that y that we just found is actually f inverse of x. Now, the question on the review is the same type question. They want you to find the inverse of the function f of x equals 2x plus 3 over 4x minus 5. Now, what makes this one look a little bit more daunting is that it's a fraction or a rational expression or a rational function. But the process is still the same. It just requires you to do a little bit more algebra. Again, remember, f of x is the same thing as y. So we're going to interchange x and y. So we would have x equals 2y plus 3 divided by 4y minus 5. I want to eliminate the fraction, and we eliminate fractions by multiplying by the common denominator. And for this problem, that common denominator would be 4y minus 5. And technically, it's over a value of 1. So if we multiply through, we have x times 4y minus 5 equals 2y plus 3 over 4y minus 5 times 4y minus 5 over 1. When you do that multiplication on the right side, on the left side, you have 4xy minus 5x equals 4y minus 5 in the denominator and in the numerator divides out, and I'm left with 2y plus 3. Keeping in mind, my goal is to solve for x. The next step, I need to get all the y's together and everything else together. So to get the y's together, I'm going to subtract 4xy from either side, which gives me negative 5x equals 2y minus 4xy plus 3. Then I need to move the 3 to the other side to isolate the y's. So I'm going to subtract 3. So I have negative 5x minus 3 equals 2y minus 4xy. On the right side, I notice that I have a common factor of y, so I'm going to factor it out. So I have negative 5x minus 3 equals y, and I'm left with 2y minus, I'm left with 2 minus 4x. Sorry about that. All right, then I need to divide both sides by the 2 minus 4x to isolate the y. So I'm left with negative 5x minus 3 over 2 minus 4x, and that equals y. But remember that y is your F inverse. Again, it's not difficult. It's just remembering how to do all of those algebra steps.